Imagine a country where the easternmost and westernmost points are in the same state. One city is sinking under its own weight, and one river occasionally decides to flow backwards. Welcome to the United States, where the geography sounds fake but isn't. Fact 1. Alaska breaks your brain. Let's start with the most mind-bending one. Alaska is the northernmost, westernmost, and easternmost state in the U.S. On a classroom wall map, Alaska looks like a lonely ice block shoved in the corner, but that picture is quietly wrong. The Aleutian Islands cross the 181st meridian, so part of Alaska actually sits in the eastern hemisphere. Fact 2. The U.S. is still growing new land. The U.S. isn't just big, it's literally expanding in slow motion. In places like the Mississippi River Delta and parts of the Gulf Coast, rivers carry massive loads of sediment that keep building new land at the edges of the country, grain by grain. Fact 3. Wyoming has islands but no sea. Wyoming is completely landlocked, nowhere near any ocean or Great Lake, and yet it has over 30 named islands. That sounds like a trick question from a geography teacher who hates you, but it's purely a cartographer's quirk. These islands sit in rivers and lakes, such as those inside Yellowstone and other reservoirs, so they count as official islands even though the state has never seen a coastline. Fact 4. Nebraska is trapped 3 times over. If you ever feel stuck in life, spare a thought for Nebraska, which is triply landlocked. Not only does Nebraska have no coastline, everyone knows that part, but every state that touches Nebraska is also landlocked. Go one more layer out. Even if you pass through any of those states, you'd still need to cross yet another state to finally reach an ocean. Fact 5. A U.S. state owns the rainforest you didn't know about. People usually picture the Amazon or some tropical island when they hear rainforest, not the U.S. Yet the U.S. has a massive temperate rainforest in Alaska's Tongass National Forest, packed with moss-covered trees and heavy rain, in the same country that also contains Death Valley, one of the hottest, driest places in North America. So inside one border, you get both soaked near Arctic forest and scorching desert. Fact 6. Centralia, the town that became an underground fire. There is a town in Pennsylvania that has been burning beneath the surface since 1962. In Centralia, an underground coal mine fire ignited and never really stopped. The fires spread through abandoned coal seams and are still smoldering decades later. The town above became so unstable and dangerous that most residents left. The streets cracked, and smoke once seeped from the ground like something out of a horror movie. Yet on maps, it still looks like any other small American town. Fact 7. The U.S. owns a draining hole in the ocean. On the Oregon coast near the town of Yakuts, there's a rock formation called Thor's Well that looks like the ocean is being flushed down a giant drain. Waves slam into a rocky bowl and vanish into a hole, and as the tide surges in and out, it creates a dramatic illusion. Proof that some American coastlines are a lot stranger than the calm beach photos suggest. Fact 8. Alaska has more coastline than you think. Forget California's famous beaches. Alaska quietly blows every other state out of the water in terms of coastline length. Its shoreline stretches about 6,640 miles, thanks to endless bays, inlets, islands, and rugged twists where land meets the sea. That's far more than California, Florida, or any state people usually picture as coastal. Fact 9. Maine isn't the easternmost after all. Ask most people what the easternmost point of the U.S. is, and Maine usually gets the vote. New England, sunrise, first light. But that's not quite right. While Maine is the easternmost state in the contiguous U.S., some of Alaska's Aleutian Islands extend farther east in terms of longitude because they cross into the eastern hemisphere. Fact 10. One state has over 4,000 islands, and it's not Hawaii. If asked which state has the most islands, many people would confidently say Hawaii or maybe Florida. In reality, Alaska wins again, with over 4,000 named islands. The Aleutians alone form a vast arc of volcanic islands, and the southeast coast is carved up into countless forested islands and islets. Hawaii may be more famous for beaches and tourism, but Alaska is the true island empire of the United States. Fact 11. The Great Lakes are basically an inland ocean. The Great Lakes look like regular lakes on a map, but together they hold an astonishing amount of freshwater. They contain roughly 20% of the world's surface freshwater supply, an amount so huge that calling them lakes almost feels disrespectful. Fact 12. The Mississippi River sometimes flows backwards. Rivers are supposed to flow in one direction, right? Well, most of the time, yes. But the Mississippi River has been known to briefly reverse its flow. During powerful events like earthquakes or extreme storms, the river's current has, in rare instances, been pushed backward, sending water upstream instead of down to the Gulf of Mexico. Fact 13. The U.S. hides the longest cave system on Earth. The United States is home to the longest known cave system in the world, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. This sprawling labyrinth of underground passages stretches for hundreds of miles that have been mapped, and there are likely still more tunnels waiting to be explored. Above ground, the landscape looks peaceful and ordinary. Fact 14. You can be pulled uphill by a haunted road. There are places in the US where your car appears to roll uphill on its own, defying gravity, or at least pretending to. These spots are usually called gravity hills, or mystery hills, where the slope of the land and the lack of a full horizon trick your brain. The road is actually sloping downhill, but your eyes insist you're going uphill, so when your parked car starts to roll, it feels supernatural. Fact 15. The US has its own Bermuda Triangle. Massachusetts contains a region known as the Bridgewater Triangle, a roughly 200 square mile area famous for strange sightings, missing persons cases, and general weirdness. While it's not an officially recognized geographic region like a park or a county, stories around this triangle are so persistent that it has become a permanent part of American geographic folklore. Fact 16. There's a desert in Alaska. Alaska is known for snow, glaciers, and tundra, but it also has a desert. The Great Kobuk Sand Dunes in Kobuk Valley National Park are massive wind-blown dunes that look like they were teleported in from the Sahara. They formed from glacial sediments ground down to fine sand and carried by ancient winds, leaving behind a landscape where caribou footprints cut across dune ridges instead of camel tracks. Fact 17, and a desert in Maine too. Even Maine has its own so-called desert, a 40-acre patch of sand near the town of Freeport. It's not a true desert by climate, but geologically it behaves like one. A wide area of glacial sand left behind about 11,000 years ago, slowly blowing and shifting in the wind. Surrounded by forests and classic New England scenery, it looks like a glitch in reality. Fact 18. One U.S. state is physically getting bigger. Utah's Great Salt Lake is famously shrinking, but another region of the U.S. is physically expanding its land area. In parts of the Great Basin in Nevada, crustal stretching is slowly pulling the land apart, creating basins and ranges, and gradually changing the landscape. Elsewhere, tectonic forces and volcanic activity in states like Hawaii are adding new land via lava flows hardening into rock. Fact 19. The U.S. has a pink lake. Utah is home to parts of the Great Salt Lake that can turn a vivid pink color, especially near causeways where water circulation is restricted. This bizarre shade comes from high salinity combined with certain microorganisms and algae that thrive in salty environments. From above, it looks like someone poured strawberry milk into a chunk of the desert. Fact 20. One city is sinking under its own weight. Manhattan, the dense heart of New York City, is literally sinking, slowly, under the weight of its skyscrapers. The sheer mass of steel, concrete, and glass presses down on the soft sediments beneath the island, contributing to subsidence over time. Combine that with rising sea levels, and you get a future where New York's relationship with water becomes even more complicated than it already is. Fact 21. There's an underwater forest off Alabama. Off the coast of Alabama lies an ancient drowned cypress forest, buried for tens of thousands of years and only recently discovered. It was preserved under layers of sediment until storms exposed it, revealing stumps and logs that still contain sap and structure despite their age. Divers can explore a ghostly underwater woodland where trees stood long before modern coastlines existed. Fact 22. Some U.S. rivers go the wrong way. The idea that rivers must flow south is deeply ingrained, but the U.S. has plenty of rivers that go north or in confusing directions. There are rivers that flow from south to north due to local elevation differences, carving paths that defy schoolbook expectations. Fact 23. One state's shape is missing a chunk. Colorado looks like a perfect rectangle in most people's minds, but its borders are not as straight and clean as they appear on classroom maps. When you zoom in with precise GPS, survey errors and historical limitations mean the corners and edges wobble a bit from the ideal latitudes and longitudes they were meant to follow. The state advertised as a perfect box is actually a slightly warped, almost rectangle carved into real, imperfect Earth. Fact 24. The U.S. has a permanent ocean whirlpool. In the Gulf of Maine, oceanographers have identified a semi-persistent gyre, essentially a large ocean whirlpool caused by currents, winds, and the shape of the seafloor. It doesn't behave like a cartoon whirlpool that swallows ships, but it circulates water in a stable, looping pattern that affects local ecosystems and weather. In a country famous for tornadoes on land, there's also a quiet, rotating neighbor offshore. Fact 25. There's a graveyard of the Pacific. The Pacific Northwest coast is home to a region sailors call the Graveyard of the Pacific, thanks to its treacherous storms, shifting sandbars, and narrow entrances to harbors. Hundreds of shipwrecks have occurred along this coast, especially around the Columbia River Bar, where river and ocean forces collide. To this day, it remains one of the most dangerous marine passages in the United States. Fact 26. One tiny state grows by 20% at low tide. Rhode Island is the smallest U.S. state by area, but at low tide, it temporarily gains about 20% more land. Shallow coastal zones, tidal flats, and exposed seabeds expand the usable surface when the water pulls back. That means the state's effective footprint breathes in and out with the ocean twice a day, swelling and shrinking invisibly to most people. Fact 27. The Continental Divide quietly controls where water goes. The Continental Divide is an invisible line running mostly along the crest of the Rocky Mountains, deciding the fate of raindrops. Water that falls on one side eventually finds its way to the Pacific, while water on the other side flows toward the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico. Fact 28. The U.S. hides a prehistoric sea underground. Beneath parts of the Great Plains, geologists have found evidence of an ancient inland sea that once covered vast stretches of what is now dry land. While the water is gone, marine fossils, sediments, and buried geological structures reveal that this region used to be a shallow sea full of ancient life. Fact 29. Florida is hollowed out by underground rivers. Florida is famous for beaches and theme parks, but beneath its surface runs one of the world's most extensive karst systems. Much of the state's limestone bedrock has been dissolved by water over time, creating underground rivers, caves, and sinkholes. An estimated third of the flowing water in some regions travels through hidden underground channels instead of surface rivers. Fact 30. The U.S. has more mapped underwater caves than you'd expect. Florida alone has over 1,000 meters of mapped underwater cave systems, and that's just what has been properly explored. These flooded caves form bizarre, otherworldly passageways where divers navigate tight corridors in total darkness except for their lights. Fact 31. One stretch of desert hides endless dunes and caribou. Kobuk Valley's sand dunes in Alaska are not just a quirky desert. They're among the largest active dune fields in the Arctic. In summer, the sand heats up, creating warm pockets in an otherwise cool environment, while caribou herds migrate across them as if crossing a northern Sahara. Fact 32. One U.S. border is the longest international boundary on Earth. The border between the United States and Canada is the longest international land border in the world, stretching for thousands of miles. Fact 33. Yellowstone is the world's largest geyser field. Yellowstone National Park in the US hosts the largest concentration of geysers on Earth. It sits atop a volcanic hotspot where heat from below the crust drives water up in explosive bursts. Fact 34. The US reaches from tropics to Arctic and almost every climate in between. Geographers often point out that the US contains an incredible range of climate zones, from Arctic conditions in northern Alaska to tropical conditions in Hawaii and southern Florida. Fact 35. One country, 35 glitches in your mental map. Taken together, these facts turn US geography into a patchwork of loopholes and, wait, really dihat moments, where Alaska is both east and west, rivers briefly run backward, and deserts appear in frozen states. The tidy school map was only the tutorial. Once you zoom in, the US becomes a cluster of wild geographic plot twists that just happen to share a border. If those facts broke your mental map of the US, that's your sign to stick around. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment which fact you're using to confuse your friends first. It helps the channel more than you think.